I was thinking today about how we've made training easier for players, and in general, we've made childhood easier for most children in this generation. And I'm wondering how much of a negative effect that has on skill development specifically, and then ultimately talent development and just general success in life as well. So I was thinking about one of the earliest players who I trained and his father. We couldn't find a gym one day, and I said, hey, we can work out, outside. I mean, it's less than ideal. I was living in Sacramento, California at the time. It was summer, so it's hot. Uh, you know, Asphalt court or concrete court, something. Less than ideal, less than what we would hope for, but we could still practice and play, and no big deal. I knew the family fairly well. I knew the father. The father had talked to me, a number of times about his childhood, growing up playing, on outdoor courts, playing with a future NBA player, on these outdoor courts when he was a child and teenager, and how that kind of affected his own, development as a player. So I thought maybe, he's the type of parent who's going to embrace, and yeah, of course, my son can go out and, we can practice one time on an outdoor court or an asphalt court or something. Uh, but instead, the father said, no, I just don't want my son playing on the asphalt. It's bad for him, hurt his knees, yada yada, whatever the, primary excuses were at the time. And so thinking about that, okay, no big deal. We'll wait till we can get a court inside, work out there and have a good workout and so on and so forth. But what does that mean for players? I grew up and probably the place where I practiced the most was my driveway. It was slanted, and it was kind of a gravelish type driveway. That are kind of, like pebbles that were cemented over, I guess, is the best way I could describe it. And so, you know, it's different than, dribbling on a hardwood court. The bounces are different, etc. I had trees that were planted at the same time as my basket was planted, into the ground. And so as the trees developed, the leaves and the branches came more and more onto the court. So when I shot a baseline jump shot, for instance, on the right side of the court, I had to somehow either shoot over or through some tree branches. And so depending on the time of the year, it would be different. In the wintertime, when the leaves were gone, it was an easier shot than during the spring or summer when the leaves were in full bloom, and it created more of a thicker, impenetrable defense. I also had the overhang. If I tried to shoot on the left side of the court, the overhang of my garage, limited how far out I could shoot and how high I could shoot my release. So I had these different things that I had to deal with when I was playing on that court, and obviously, none of them were that difficult, and I had my own hoops, so I had certain advantages just because of that. But it did create a variable experience. When I got to the edge of my driveway, then I was dribbling on concrete or on an asphalt or a street, and so I would be dribbling and making a move and go straight from the kind of pebbly ground to the asphalt. There'd be the curb there. There's all these different constraints in the environment, different things that could cause me to lose the ball. And instead now we typically have players who only dribble a basketball inside on a hardwood court. And so I think, not that any of the, external things in my environment were that difficult to overcome, but they did add a measure of variability to every time I took the court. So even if I was doing, block practice or individual practice, there was inherent variability just because of the way that my driveway was built, where my hoop was placed, how my garage was there, the trees, etc. There was constant variability there, and so I think in past generations when players spent a lot more time on outdoor courts, playing a game on an outdoor court immediately offers more variability. Uh, you know, Especially the type of court. Is it more of a sport court? Is it asphalt? Is it concrete? Is it slanted? And then is there wind? Is it protected? Is it out in the open, or is it, kind of closed in? Is there a building nearby that kind of blocks the wind, maybe blocks the sun? Are the baskets behind the sun, sun's to the side? So all these things add variability to one's practice. So even if you're doing the same thing from day to day, there's a certain difference from day to day in terms of the practice. And so this is just one of the ideas that I had, but I think we've spent so much time trying to make things easier for young players, to try to encourage them, to play, to increase their self-esteem, for them to have some early success, that I think we've taken away some of, the struggle. And some of the recent studies in terms of super champions have shown, I think it's Dave Collins' study, has shown, the importance of struggles, in a super champion's development. And these aren't necessarily the type of struggles that we're talking about, but I think for an athlete to develop the ability, in high school or college or professionally, to handle a big adversity, I think having small bits of adversity, and manageable amounts of adversity at a young age can be beneficial. And so just adding that variability, putting these somewhat harder challenges, can help players to develop more resiliency, as young players. And then the variability of practice then can also help to expand one's skill set at an earlier age, as opposed to a narrowing of the skill set, which tends to happen with the way that we encourage players to practice now. And that along the same lines is, age groups versus, children playing up against older children, maybe playing against younger children, different age groups and so forth like that, if I play, like I did on the weekends, I would play with older players, high school players, when I was in middle school, and so I would have to change my performance because I was playing against older players. But then at school, I was one of the bigger players, so I could do different things on my schoolyard than I could on the weekends against the high school players. So I was always in different environments that forced me to adopt different behaviors on the court. So I was thinking that this as I was listening to a podcast with somebody from Dutch baseball was talking, and he was talking about the Netherlands Antilles versus the United States, and how in the United States, most baseball players grow up on nice fields, and whereas they're playing on dirt fields or asphalt or wherever they can find and make a field. And so he was commenting on the natural variability that playing on this less than ideal field presents, whereas if you grow up on a perfectly manicured field, which is great, but it also reduces that variability. I remember the field that I grew up playing baseball on, there were rocks everywhere. The ground was really hard. It wasn't the best field, but it probably did make us better fielders because we were accustomed to bad hops. And we really had to pay attention more when we were fielding ground balls, because you never knew where the ball was going to go. And so then when we got on to a nice field, it made it easier compared to our home field. And I think some of the same things go on with, with basketball, with how we've changed from players growing up playing, a good amount of their basketball outdoors, on concrete or asphalt courts, versus now where, most players will play 90 to 100% of their basketball indoors on some form of hardwood or sport court type floor, that really reduces that variability and makes it easier to learn the skills. And so in that ease of learning the skills, which has certain benefits, I think we do lose some of the challenge and the variability and the resilience that we used to develop by having to play in less than ideal fields or courts or situations.